Joining me now for an interview with Andrew Hoffman, Marketing Director for MilesFranklin.com. Miles Franklin Limited is one of the largest full-service discount brokers for gold and silver bullion, platinum and palladium, and numismatics in North America. Mr. Hoffman was a buy-side and sell-side analyst working on Wall Street at Solomon Smith Barney. For the last 10 years, his focus was entirely centered on the metals market, primarily gold and silver. Previous to joining Miles Franklin, he worked as a consultant to junior mining companies. He writes a daily blog found on the MilesFranklin.com website simply called Ranting Andy, and we're pleased to have him as a regular guest on the Ellis Martin Report. This interview was conducted Thursday, February 29th, 2012. Andy, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Ellis.
I take it from what I extrapolated from Bernanke yesterday, and you know it's hard to follow him. I've got to admit you really have to be a decipher of layers and layers of who knows what to figure out what he's saying, not to be disrespectful, but I take it that we're just finishing up, or starting, to quote in your words, to put together a paper printing orgy.
Right. Well, it's not so much that he's the person that's difficult to understand, it's all the spin that gets put around it. You know, we're talking about specifically yesterday, the spin is that gold went down because of what he said, but in fact what he said was absolutely nothing different. And I mean, he said nothing different than they said a month ago. The fact that he said we've got, the only thing he changed his comments were there have been some diverging points regarding the production outlook and the employment outlook, specific for referring to last month's bogus employment report, was kind of after the fact used as a causation of why gold was hit. And the fact was gold was hit because gold and silver were about to break out last week, particularly silver, and they had another one of their coordinated attacks, which I've called the leap day violation, which not uncoincidentally was at exactly 10 o'clock a.m., which is their favorite time to attack. That's when the physical market closes for the day. So I wouldn't worry too much about what Bernanke says. He said it all a month ago when he said we're going to do QE to infinity out to at least 2015.
I think you mentioned the cartel, and by the cartel, are you equating that to the big banks?
Yes. Well, actually, I'm really equating it to the U.S. government. If you want to go on a bigger picture, to the Western governments trying to, to control all the money and the power in the world, but the U.S. government leads that. Those banks are really just their henchmen, the J.P. Morgans and the Goldman Sachses. It's kind of like this symbiotic, where you have a parasitic disease. They both need each other. The politicians need the lobbying funds from Goldman Sachs. J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs need the political power. So together they have a plunge protection team that supports the stock markets. They control the Federal Reserve, so they control the bond market. They control the Exchange Stabilization Fund and thus the currency markets, and of course this gold cartel to suppress the precious metals prices.
Is Bernanke the cartel spokesperson?
No, he's in fact I almost think that the Federal Reserve is a puppet of these higher forces from the banks. Because let's face it, the Federal Reserve is owned. I mean, it's a chartered bank owned by these companies. Most people don't realize that. So yes, he certainly knows what's going on, but he's not the top player in the game.
Now, to some listeners, this might sound like pure conspiracy theory, but that's not where you're coming from.
No, I've been a financial analyst my entire life. I'm a CFA. I worked on Wall Street as a sell-side analyst 10 or 15 years. I back things up with numbers. I've gotten all this from the findings of GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, and, in time I've built a database of this stuff, which I've been publishing on a daily basis for years. People like to throw around the term conspiracy theory just kind of to denigrate people. It's almost like saying gold's a barbarous relic. It's not based on anything. The conspiracy is true. It's been admitted many, many times. There's plenty of proof from not only admissions, but just from the math that shows what they're doing. And look, let's face it, everyone knows that every other market is manipulated because they admit it, like, QE or the President's Working Group on Capital Markets. This is the only one that they don't want to admit because it's the linchpin of the whole system. The fact is that precious metals have been suppressed forever. There was a thing called the London Gold Pool, which did the exact same thing as the cartel's doing now. They did it in the 1960s, and eventually it was broken by demand. This time they're doing the same thing. They just don't admit that they're doing it.
Is the suppression, in your opinion, politically motivated, and will it be successful in 2012?
Well, yes, it's politically motivated. It's the ultimate battle that goes back centuries between real money and paper money, because paper money is what gives governments power. It enables them to give entitlements to anyone they want so they can get votes. It enables them to get any spending plans they want through. It enables them to make powerful friends and to keep their power base. Physical money, gold and silver, does not allow them to do that because you can only print as much money as there is gold. So it's been the enemy of governments forever, and it's been tried, dozens and dozens of times, if not hundreds of times, these fiat standards for the same reason, power, and every single time they fail. This one, like all the others, is failing. It's now 41 years old since we've gone on to this, not just one country money standard. We're on a fiat standard for the entire world. And obviously it's not working because we're seeing massive, massive debts everywhere. We're seeing massive inflation everywhere. And of course, even with the suppression, the price of gold has gone up 7 or 8 times.
I understand the Korean government is printing a lot of fake U.S. dollar. How is what this government is doing, or the Fed doing, how is this not the same sort of fraud?
Well, it is the same fraud, and that's the beauty of having an entire world on a fiat currency standard. Every single government is printing money at will because there is no backing to what they're doing. Now, of course, the Korean government can't impact the world that much because very few people use Korean won for transactions. But, some of the countries we have seen destroy their currencies just recently. We've seen it in Hungary, in Argentina, in Zimbabwe. This is just that has happened in the last few years. I put out a piece maybe a week or two ago called Fiat Failure, where I documented all of the modern era collapses of fiat currency. And you wouldn't believe it. I mean, it's literally happened in almost every country. It's happened 3 times in the United States, and people wouldn't realize it. The continental currency was destroyed by the Revolutionary War, the Confederate dollar by the Civil War, and the greenback, which was the northern dollar in the Civil War, created by Abraham Lincoln, a fiat dollar, was about to be destroyed when the war ended. So otherwise we would have lost 3 currencies.
Is it destined to happen again?
Yes, it's happening right now. It's just a matter of pace. I mean, things like yesterday, to me, just show how close we are to the end. I document the attacks like yesterday constantly. They're becoming more intense and more concentrated, meaning the intervals between such efforts are decreasing. Yet the price of gold is still sitting in the 1700s, meaning they're getting diminishing returns for all these attacks. And the fact is, you look around at the reality of what's going on with the debts of the world, with the economies of the world, with the inflation of the world, and it's just a matter of time. And it's not, it's going to be, 3 or 5 years. No, this is happening now. 2011 was a major year for changes. Obviously 2008 was, and I believe 2012, before the year's over, you're going to see some major, major changes in the way people view the world's economies.
Are you referring to, in part, the price of gold and silver? One of our other contributors, Jim Sinclair, has predicted for 2012 a $1,700 to $2,100 an ounce figure for gold. Are you in line with that, or do you see it going even higher before December 31st?
Well, I'm a little careful with predictions at a certain time because so many variables, including like what you saw yesterday, are in play. But I certainly am on record, based on my technical and fundamental analysis, of believing that we're going to be setting new all-time highs later this year. Certainly $2,000 gold and $50 silver look like no-brainers to me. But, could these things be March? Could they be December? It's hard to tell. Could it even get to next year? You just never know. But I am hard-pressed to believe that we're not going to be challenging gold's all-time high from last August, in the next 3 to 6 months, if not sooner.
Now, when I see a pullback of the kind we saw yesterday, and having had extensive conversations with David Morgan about the price of silver, and I bought a bunch of it when it was under 30. Unfortunately, I didn't do so when it was under 10. When there's a contraction based on fluffy, superficial news more or less put out by the cartel, boy, do I sound like I have an attitude today. When I hear something like that, I want to contact Miles Franklin and stock up on bullion.
Well, that's right. And again, it didn't contract based on news. It was violently attacked with naked shorting. The evidence is there. Again, people say conspiracy. The evidence is there. There were contracts that traded 375 million ounces worth of paper silver right at the time Bernanke started speaking. And that's when silver fell $3 in a matter of half an hour, 45 minutes. That's a half of all of the physical silver production of the entire world for 6 months. So it had nothing to do with the news. Bernanke said nothing. I mean, if this was more of a fear of, look, you saw gold and particularly silver really starting to break out. Earlier that day, you had the LTRO in Europe of 530 billion euros just printed and given out to banks, a major monetary inflation event. And so they attacked. And, maybe it takes a week to get back where we were, maybe it takes a month, but we'll be right back there again, and then we will challenge those highs. And, I believe that very strongly in the impact of psychological numbers, and I know the cartel does too, because that 2,000 gold and $50 silver are looming right in front of everyone's eyes.
The banks themselves are doing the naked shorting.
Well, look, naked shorting simply means selling something you don't own. Because, the concept of shorting was obviously created by the banks way back when just to get commissions, because they figured, if the people have stocks in the bank, we can have other people borrow those stocks, and then they'd have to pay us an interest rate, a margin interest rate to borrow those stocks, and then we'd get a commission on them shorting it and then covering their shorts. But that was way back when it actually was legitimate. I've never been a big fan of the concept, but it was legitimately done. Now we're at the point where particularly the big banks are naked shorting, meaning they're not borrowing the stock, they are just putting in sell orders. And when it comes to the precious metals, whether you're talking about the mining shares or the paper gold like GLD and the futures contracts like at the COMEX, this is pure naked shorting. Wouldn't it be great if you could just have an unlimited license to put in as many orders as you wanted? If you wanted to own, let's say, Tanzanian royalty, and you wanted to go up, you had the ability to buy all the shares that you wanted and never have to put up the money. Or if you wanted it down, you could short all the shares you wanted and never have to borrow the shares to get them. That's what naked shorting is, and there is no sector that you see it more than precious metals.
So the banks can never back it up. They don't have enough gold.
No, not even close. It's been admitted by some of the cartel apologists that the paper, silver, and gold markets are hundreds, if not thousands times larger than the real market behind them. And that's what they want you to do. They want people to, if they're going to buy gold, they want them to think that things like GLD are actually gold. They're pieces of paper that are, the custodians are the very same people who are trying to manipulate. The fact that SLV, the custodian is JP Morgan, who's being sued by half the planet for naked shorting silver, should show you how untrustworthy these kind of paper funds are.
You mentioned the word people, Andy. We've been talking about all these institutions as if they're institutions, and they are, but they're made up of people. What people are benefiting from all of this?
Very few. And when they say the 1%, I think that's highly overestimating it. This is a topic I write about constantly, about human nature and how it is that these people that are at the top of these food chains can get this way. And I'm not talking about Bernie Madoff people. I'm talking about way above Bernie Madoff people, the Bilderbergs, the people who are the top politicians and some of these bankers. A guy like Mario Monti, the guy who's been, installed to run Italy. He's from Goldman Sachs. He's from the Trilateral Commission. I don't know where they get these people, but these are the type of the people who are benefiting. All the banks who are receiving the ZIRP, the zero interest rate policy money, the top executives there, they're benefiting a big way, and all the politicians that get the lobbying funds, such as Obama's administration, Mitt Romney's campaign, George Bush's, you name it, that's who's benefiting. The rest of the people get nothing.
There is not a conspiracy theory. There's only truth.
Yeah, and much of it is documented.
What are we going to do with all this information in our heads?
Right. Okay. Well, look, precious metals is the only real money, and I can't emphasize enough that precious metals is not an investment. Paper precious metals is. If you're buying GLD or a stock, that certainly is. But if you're buying the metals, you have to think of it as real money. And Miles Franklin, we are one of the biggest bullion dealers in America. Our job is to help you to purchase precious metals, and if you would like to store them, we have storage facilities in both the United States and Canada.
Talk to me about Ranting Andy.
I'm from New York. I live in Denver now, but I spent 15 or 20 years as a Wall Street analyst. I did everything. I was a broker, a sell-side analyst, buy-side analyst. I left that business in 2005 because it disgusted me. I spent most of my career at Solomon Smith Barney. I saw all the corruption, saw all the conflict of interest, and I also, back in 2002, became 100% invested in precious metals. When I left Wall Street in 2005, I just taught myself the business, and I've been working for mining companies as a consultant or an investor relations officer up until this year when I joined Miles Franklin. As far as Ranting Andy, I've been writing, since 2006 or 2007, a free blog just to educate people about protecting themselves against the things I'm talking about here. It's not about recommendations, it's not about stocks, it's not about anything other than helping to protect people. And now that I'm at Miles Franklin, I can do it through this major platform. And Miles Franklin, we have a meeting of the minds. David Schechtman, who started the firm 20 years ago, he still writes a daily blog every day, and he thinks exactly as I do about the benefits of educating people about this sector which has so much propaganda surrounding it.
One final question, Andy. What are we going to do with all this gold and silver bullion that some of us are collecting when the currency collapses? We're not going to want to turn it back into cash. What are we going to do with it?
Right. Well, look, this is the kind of thing where people are always saying, well, what if this, what if that? And the fact is, we all know that what's coming ahead is going to be unprecedented. What we're seeing today is unprecedented, but what's coming ahead is going to be more so. Now, can I say that we're going to have a, quote, currency collapse where in one day everything is gone? Is it going to be more gradual? Will we bomb Iran and we'll have a world war? I mean, I don't know. But I do know this. There is no scenario going forward in which the value of paper money, particularly the U.S. dollar, is going to be higher, or which the value of precious metals is going to be lower. I want to cross that bridge when I get it, because when I get to that bridge, I assure you that precious metals are going to be worth more and the dollar's worth less.
The website is milesfranklin.com. Ranting Andy Hoffman's blog is free and easy to access. Thanks so much for joining me today, Andy.
Thanks for having me.
Find a link to milesfranklin.com on the homepage of our website, ellismartinreport.com.